This is the Sweet Song Podcast, where we unwrap your favorite songs with the artists who write them. I'm your host, Kristi York Wooten, and on this week's episode, we've got Nick Heyward from Haircut 100. This is the Sweet Song Podcast, and I'm your host, Kristi York Wooten, and today I'm thrilled beyond thrilled to have Nick Heyward joining me today to talk about the Haircut 100 tour with Howard Jones and everything that's been happening. So welcome, Nick. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Kristi.
So, I've been a fan for a long time. And after the internet, I think it became easier to kind of connect with musicians or figure out what they were up to or, the recording processes and stuff. And I know I did that with you. But how has kind of technology sort of changed your career paths? Going all the way back to Haircut 100, then your solo work, and here we are. Has technology been your friend along the way or a foe?
Well, as it's man-made, it's probably just full of the duality. Full of dualities, it's both. So I'm just focusing on the good that it's brought, really, because it's changed so much. I mean, it's great in the fact that it probably was the key to the band initially getting back together again, because it was talking on Facebook. That was back in about 2010, and we did some lovely recordings there at a friend's studio, Barry Barlow, who used to drum in Jethro Tull, and it's along the river in Shiplake. Lovely place, and he's got this kind of like little galleon-stroke wooden studio in his garden, where Echo and the Bunnymen did all their demos. And we were huge Echo and the Bunnymen fans when we first started. In fact, it was one of the influences that we put on our Melody Maker ad for a drummer. They had to be into Echo and the Bunnymen and the Yardbirds. Although when they came, we said, "Are you into Talking Heads?" and XTC.
A great combination.
But there were the influences flying all over the place at that particular point. I mean, that was probably around, I did some research on 1979 the other day for a podcast. And so I relived that year. What a year for music. And it put things in context as well, because it was the sort of mod revival into the ska revival. And that's when everything shifted as well. I mean, we'll get to see these monumental shifts. When I first looked at the Sounds magazine and it said the who's who of mod, you knew then that it was like, if you weren't mod, then you're not relevant, So you either go mod, guys, or just sit this one out. So if you're 16, 17, 18, 19, any age really, but, when you're really easily influenced as we were, you're just trying to be a band, you're trying to be just reading the New Musical Express, Melody Maker and Sounds, like they are the things, they're your life. That's what everything is filtered through. That's what it was. That's what the internet is now. That was what it was like back then. So that's a massive thing, how technology has changed. Because, you can use it to research things. You can also listen to all of your music as a touch. So as a consumer, I'm 100% happy. For £15, I know it's going up. But for that money, you can just listen to all the albums that you couldn't afford when you're growing up. So I love it. And you can get a quick burst of them as well. So if I just need to hear something like the UK subs, if I'm in that mood, I want to hear the first Stranglers album. I want to hear that first Clash album. I want to get a burst of that moment. Or I want to hear anything. It's there. And I think that's helped us and music just generally. It's everybody's having a kind of, these used to be cultural waves that came along via the music press. And now they're little like cultural waves on your phone, just personal ones or with your friends. They're not like huge cultural waves. They're just, so you can probably get a school, say, or a university, and you've got so many different people. You've got indie crowd there, you've got urban there, grime here or there and everywhere, and it's just all over the place. So, I mean, my friend Amelia Fletcher from Heavenly, who sang on Tangled, a song Believe in Me, and also just made brilliant records with Ian Shaw, who we used to work together all the way through the 80s and 90s, just making music. He was like the person that you went to do your demos. Julian Cope used to go there, and he was more like a therapist, really. He just used to sit there and do that. And because it was so reasonably priced, you could make stuff up and it was magic because it wasn't too expensive. So all the best stuff got made in the demo studios and ended up being kept. And that's what Kite was. I kept that recording and just colored it in a little bit. So I think everybody that made, anyway, I digress. Amelia wrote, Amelia Fletcher from Heavenly are still going, and they played at the Islington Town Hall, I think it was, the other day, and it was full of young people, full of the young indie crowd that are now just going, well, I'm indie, so I'll listen to The Cure, Heavenly, Slow Dive. That's my music. That's what I'm into, because they've got it on their phone. So that's the great thing that's happened. That's all the positive stuff.
And it's like
it's not lost forever now.
Yeah, it's like an intersection too with these little segmented listening groups. They might find someone online who shares that, or they might have a friend at school or in real life that likes the same thing. But the lack of discovering it at the same time is kind of also something that is missing. So let's go back to your musical journey. How old were you when you knew you had the music in you?
Well, music was everywhere. Influence-wise, it was all around the house. Dad was into jazz, huge into jazz, the big band mostly. So, and my brother Pete is just into music. His bedroom was alive with the sound of music. And Mum's was the sound of music. She loved musicals and the Carpenters. So between us all, there was just a hodgepodge of influences all over the place. And I was the youngest, so I was just soaking it all up, really. And then my first, well, I remember hearing Hey Jude when I was looking at a green phone, very much this color, actually. They came in the 60s, around about, I don't know, 60, 67, 68, and I was listening to Hey Jude it was on the radiogram in the lounge over by the fruit bowl and the Greek urn and stuff. The carpet was it's very colourful. Everything was colourful, starting to be more colourful. And then the TV went colour. Everything. I know you guys had it early, but we had it quite late, really. But everything started to sort of brighten up and go a little bit multicolours. And then we won the World Cup. So everything was really good in the country. It was a fantastic feeling generally. And I heard that. And I think because I'd made a connection between feeling good and the music, it felt like. And I don't think I hadn't gone to see Count Basie and Ray Charles and Oscar Peterson at Hammersmith Odeon then with my father. But we'd gone to see The Sound of Music, lots of Bond movies. So that was always up in London. So I associate that with getting lost in Trafalgar Square and red velvet in the cinema. It was so plush, and then, da-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum, and everything. And it was so I connected more visually with it all, like going to the cinema with my nan, seeing Jungle Book, things like that. It was just like I connected the music really more with the visuals. So they were just listening to it, but I felt like film and cinema for me. I mean, when I first had The Graduate, it was so emotive. You get the mixture of music and visuals together. It wasn't very literate in our family, really. So it was more about TV and films and going to concerts and things. And whatever came out of the stereogram or stereos, they just evolved.
Well, I know based on some of the things you've shared on social media over the years, you do identify with some of those childhood things, puppets or trains or, just sort of this archetypal British TV childhood stuff, in the same way that a lot of us in the States have those memories of Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers and all the shows that were on in the background, where Mr. Rogers was like a preacher, but he was also like a jazz musician who could play incredible people. And those sounds, it sort of gets in your ear and gives you an appetite for those things, if you're exposed to them at a young age. So how did you get from those influences to Haircut 100? And you guys were still teens when you started playing together.
Yeah. Well, it was also films like That'll Be the Day and Stardust, really British films made quite cheaply. It had Adam Faith and David Essex in, and Keith Moon and Paul Nicholas. Yeah, so went to see those films, and they were a huge influence because David Essex took off and his band took off, and they got massive, and they went to America, and it was the dream. And then he ended up living in this Spanish villa, all drugged out of his eyeballs and wearing white, and it was so dramatic. And if you're living in Beckenham and Bromley at that particular time, it seemed like another world. And wow, imagine doing that. And David Bowie lived in our town, so you thought it was really, really possible. If David Bowie can do that, we were watching him on Young Americans, I think it was around that particular time. He was in America and Space Odyssey was happening, and it was all just, he was from another planet. But he was from Beckenham. He probably knew the Wimpy Bar, the same Wimpy Bar we all went in. He went in the same cinema and watched Grease, maybe. Maybe he sneaked in there. I mean, maybe he didn't, but maybe he did. I think he used to drink in the same, we used to drink in the pub every Friday night because we knew it was David Bowie's kind of art lab back in his time. And I wanted to go to the same school because originally we were from Brixton, so I'd kind of done a similar thing, our family, with Brixton, then Beckenham, and I wanted to go to Ravensbourne Art College, but I didn't get in because I needed to get some more qualifications because I just had learning difficulties at school. It was like, I loved arts, I loved all the things I loved, but everything else just seemed a complete blur. It's like, I loved history, but then that involved other things, and it was such an awful education. It was such a bad school. It was when all the cuts were happening. It was pretty, I mean, I look back and I love it, of course, but at the time when you're living through it, England in the 70s was quite tough, especially in South London. It was really quite tough, and there were lots of skinheads and fights everywhere. In fact, on the new Hecka album, I've tipped my hat to that a little bit, and there's a song called Come Back to Me, which is about, we used to play in sort of bombed out areas of London, like that film Melody. Have you seen that film Melody? And that's a great soundtrack. It's the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees did the soundtrack. David Putnam film.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I
Yeah,
noticed.
great film. Jack Wilde. That's so sweet. It's one of the sweetest films to watch, and it's kind of like my youth had a bit of that as well. So if anybody's watching here and they want to know what the UK was like in London in roundabouts of the late 60s, 70s, watch Melody. It's a great film.
That's something.
Yeah, that was a sweet part of it.
But all of that creating a landscape of not necessarily escape, but escape through music.
Yeah.
And of course, Bowie being such a great example of a way to do that, because he didn't leave. He just became from another planet, just magically.
Yeah, that was it.
That was Bowie was just that aura that created everything that a lot of the bands wanted to do and be at the time. But did you ever think of Haircut 100 when you were starting as being a rock band? Or
well, there were many bands, but that's the power of imagination, isn't it? You could imagine yourself out of this place. You can visualize, you can have visions. And after seeing those films and visualizing what was possible and having all these pioneers like David Bowie, and thinking it's possible, but then thinking how possible, because I mean, at one point I was in this dingy, we lived in a pub, and my room was like broken window, looked out onto a railway, and there was like huge rats that I could see at night. It wasn't great. It was like there's a Diamond Dogs kind of feel about it. It wasn't great. And I thought, how on earth is that going to happen? But you put on music, like I would put on something like the Tubes, White Punks on Dope, and then everybody going like that, yeah. But meanwhile, that wasn't what was happening in Sound, Melody Maker, and Record Mirror. It wasn't going on, but it was going on in the bedroom between Peckham and Lewisham, the street. I mean, it was so dodgy to get home at night because I was still going to school in Beckenham, so I had to get this bus all the way through these areas and stuff, and sometimes chased home as well. So sometimes I didn't even go. So I would be at home in this room with no carpet, holes in the walls everywhere and stuff. And there was a dog that had been kept upstairs, and they just let it run and live up there, kind of thing. And nobody's cleaned it up for years. So it was in the summer. It just smelt of dogs, Diamond Dogs. So yeah, it was. But that's the power of the imagination and visualization, and I just kept dreaming through music to get through this, and thinking it was all possible, but hadn't started bands or anything. And I mean, the time I started, Lawrence Bull was the first time he was a jazz drummer at school, and used to go around his house, and we used to play together. But I couldn't really play then. I just had a guitar from Woolworths, so I used to just take it round to his, and we kind of listened to records and mimed, But the first real band was when I worked round about the time of that pub, I got a job up in, I finished with school, came out with 1 O level. They said you could get, well, because you can obviously, you're creative, you've got a great screen printing career ahead of you, I'm sure. But you'd have to go back to get into Ravensbourne, you'll have to go back to school. And I thought, I don't think I can do that. I'm living in London now. So I got this job up in London. Rob, my friend in the art studio, because I thought, I wanted to do art. I knew I wanted to do art in some way, commercial art, because I loved designing posters and things. And so Rob and I punk was happening full on at that particular time. Step Forward Records was just around the corner from the art studio. So going around there, going to Sniffing Glue. And Rob and I we just went into Tin Pan Alley, and he bought a snare and I bought a guitar, a copy, Telecaster copy, I think it was. And we went home by that particular time, Mum and Dad had moved up to London and got another bar. So we're just going hopping between bars like rabbits, bunnies. And bunnies are behind bars.
You did. Well, let me just back up. So the reason I asked the question about the rock band, because when I saw, I've seen you solo. You came to Atlanta. I think it was in 1994. You came on the Kite tour, from Monday to Sunday, and I never thought of Haircut 100 as a rock band until I saw you all. I mean, I always thought you were interesting. You had interesting sort of time signatures and themes going on. And then I was completely blown away by this performance, on this tour with Howard Jones when you all are playing. It was just incredible. The musicianship, attitude, it was so refreshing and amazing. And it really just totally opened up my whole world of going back and rethinking your whole catalog. And also, the melody writing, I think, is what you're most known for, really, is this consummate, just indelible melodies. And I'd never kind of put it all together into the package that was presented. So kudos to you. But since the
Thank
band...
you. Thank you very much for that. That's great. Thank you.
Of course.
Much appreciated.
Do you think, though, now that so on your journey with a band, which I know is currently on again with this next leg of the tour, what is your kind of goal for the music now? I know that you all have new music coming. You've done some recording. Do you have anything you can tell us about any of that? Or are you just in the moment with this?
But we're still actually in that creative process at the moment, nearly there. Just got to get it over the line. So, and it's all coming together. The whole book is normally there. So if it was a picture, it's at the framing shop. If it's a book, all the chapters are done.
Okay.
They've just got to be. It's a bit more editing, and the title's there, the cover's nearly there, so it's nearly there. We're just at the nearing the finish line. And I suppose influences wise, maybe we were like that because we're all wearing our influences more. Graham, when I first met Graham outside the Wimpy Bar in Beckenham High Street, he was in full Clash regalia. He had the hat on, chains, the whole thing. And I remember thinking, because I just got to know him and we became friends first. It wasn't like, oh, let's meet, let's be in the band together. It was just, I just really liked him. And so we used to go on holiday together and stuff. And so we were friends. And then I think he went through that stage of wearing full Clash gear because it was starting to be more mod. And I think he was going that way. He was in a band called Low Numbers. Now they're a mod band. We were talking about that yesterday, actually, Jonesy and I. And so he was then, so that was that influence. Then he was going a bit more mod. But also we have the influences before then, before he got into the Clash. So similar way, before I was that, I was listening to the Doobie Brothers. Les was listening to Hendrix, and in the 60s it was Burt Bacharach, Jonesy was listening to Enter the Dragon theme music. He was obsessed with Enter the Dragon. So you just have your influences. Now I feel that it's moved on, everything's moved on. So you can actually wear all your influences out in the open. Jones is going more like that. He's not going to be, I'm just going to go do one thing and go to what we were in 1982. We're all things all at once now. Same with music and contemporary music now. It's everything all at once. Influences all over the place. Everything's happening. There's no one thing. It's just, there's one thing as in there's the internet, but basically it's all styles of music. The amount of musicians that are around is stunning. It's such an inspiration, to me, because I remember I've gone through times when it's been a dirty word to be a musician. It used to be called muso, and stuff. And it's like, no, I just want to get better at what I do, there was always that it's an indie mentality to be not so good. It's like the opposite of Prince, just look down, not be very good, and don't put in much effort in, and you can actually make an art out of that and a craft out of it. And it's amazing to do that. But for some indie bands, it's more like underachieving. It's applauded to be underachieving. Whereas, I don't know, I've just always been inspired by things and easily influenced, and music-wise, it's all there now. And so we're just being more influenced. And on the new album, it starts with this song called Vanishing Point, it just sounds like San Francisco, because it's so influenced by American TV and film. And the soundtracks we used to get. And I used to make posters when I was a kid for that. So that's part of Haircut now that's coming through. And we've all been into that in the band, So when we talk about that, we're going like, Vanishing Point. It's like, oh yeah, that fantastic film. It's so 1973, 4, 5. And then we're just, some of this stuff sounds like average white bands we're playing now, because we're better musicians and we can play a bit more like that. Whereas when we're in Haircut, it was just more youthful, because we were actually almost just out of our teens, coming from 19 into 20, then it kicked off, and it's 20 into 21. I had my 21st birthday in LA when Love Plus One was like happening. But, Jonesy was a bit younger, this was a bit older, Blair a bit older. But we're all round about that early times. I look back now and I look at Blair and he looks like a kid, It's with his afro going, It's just like one of Kool and the Gang's little brothers, which I think it probably is.
It's like a whole new band, It's
yes,
everything all at once.
We're really loving it. When we were recording in the studio, it was just the four of us in the studio putting it down. And the live element of the album is really important, that live playing. It's just captured live, old school, in the studio.
That's what I love. So we need to talk about songs, because it is the Sweet Song podcast. So I want to talk to you. What's the favorite melody you've ever written? It could even just be a little bar from something.
I do like the melody in Kite, I must say, because I didn't sit down and write it with a guitar. That's why I think it's got an element of, it's a different melody that I normally come up with. Normally, when I sit with the guitar, it's singer-songwriter. It's rhythmical almost immediately. I'm doing this, and I've become one with it. And so it's a certain type of groove that I've got into, like a record groove. And that's what I keep doing. So whereas with Kite, I was so enjoying the process of that song, because when I just felt so frustrated at not being able to write this single, because I'd never really done that thing of really, really trying to write a single, because that wasn't really how it came about. You just do what you do, love what you do, and then they become singles. That's how, because I remember when Love Plus One was chosen as single, I thought, that's not a single, only because it wasn't ever going to be. It wasn't written as a single. It was probably Bob Sargent, the producer's job, to make it sound like a single, with his production techniques. But for us, it was like that Talking Heads kind of song where it went chicka 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 chicka. So Kite, I would say, because I took my favourite chords that I'd recorded, drove it home out of frustration, and got up the next day and was eating breakfast, and I had my ghetto-y blaster thing that I called the Cow on the table, and never used to work sometimes, but it did that morning. It was having a good day. It was working. I put a cassette in, study how long ago it was, and played it, this bit of music, A minor, C, D, and it's like lovely chords that I loved. But I didn't have any connection with it, because if I'd have played those chords normally, I'd have just done the normal things that I sing over that. But and I had my book open, just like here, I always have a book around to do my doodles and stuff, write things in and stuff. And there was life's like that, and don't let them shoot your kite out of the sky, and just these notes I'd written when I'd watched the TV once, and I just started humming it over the music. And so that's why I think I tried to be an acrobat before I could run. And I think that tried to be an acrobat before I could run. The afternoon came, trumpets play. Oh, well, it was just all came at once. And I would have not sat down and written that way at all. It had to have come via the process of these lyrics, these words fitting. It just fitted like a really easy puzzle. Like somebody gave me a really easy puzzle to do, and it was like I was enjoying it. And then I forgot about the process, and I was just going, "Oh, this is good. Breakfast is good this morning. Oh, this is good, good." And then driving up to the studio, it's like I had to put the cassette on in the car. It's like, well, maybe I'll get it. Oh, remember that, Nick. Remember that. Remember that. You know, you couldn't. You would have to write it down in those days, so I couldn't do that on the A3. Then get to Fulham and then jot some more down, and then actually when I was singing it, some words came on the spur, on the spot. You know, I think that acrobat line came. I thought, oh, that's good. And I think I didn't have one. I like it's play. I think it was trumpets play I didn't have, and that just was the last piece of the puzzle that came in at the end of the day, and that was it. And that's actually the vocal that ended up on the record. I'm a doodle person. I love doodling and I like keeping the doodles because the doodles can be expanded into other things because they're normally, the doodles are out of nowhere land. The doodles are, when you're on the phone, you do your best doodles. You know, the best ideas come out of nowhere when you're not thinking. When you're being too conscious sometimes, it's a bit of the anathema for writing. Nothing really, it's the trying to be funny thing. Like trying to be a brilliant artist. Right, if I sit here now with a pen, try and be the best artist you could ever be. Do something amazing. Bollocks. You know, same with writing. If you imagine an author is exactly the same.
Yeah, just writing it
You know?
down.
Yeah.
And my book is out of reach. It's right over there. But yeah, same thing. Doodles and notes. What song do you wish
Great,
you...
isn't it?
It is. I always have a pen. I'm just old school. I need a pen. What song do
Snap.
you wish you'd written?
What
It
song I
could be
wished I'd written?
by anybody.
God, thousands. God, Penny Lane. I'd love to have written that. I'd love to have a better singing voice because I write these songs and I'd just love to sing them better. Getting back to that thing, that's why I like the Kite thing because that's actually my true, authentic voice because I'm just kind of like doing it. I'm not trying too hard because when I try too hard to be something like a soul singer or something like that, it just doesn't sound any good. You got to be who you are, really. But songs, God, can I get back to you on that? Because I could really come up with a good list, a long list. I mean, you know, there's this. I mean, Wichita Lineman. That song actually, I listened to it again for the first time in a long time, and it made me cry. That first key change. It's just, and I went. It was just something so beautiful. I think it's because I just had a operation on my ear. I came back after that tour in America, and I did an English tour, and then went straight after the next day into an operation for my ear to have something removed in there. It's like 8 hours in there, 8 hours in surgery, and it was off. Like I didn't realize it was going to be that intense, but I was out for 8 hours. Apparently, it was nighttime and I'd gone in the morning, and I saw the pictures afterwards. I think people, you know, doctors weren't telling me too much about it because if I'd have known, it would have been a bit like, ooh. But I remember pretty much enjoying the whole process, really, being out and then waking up, pain, and it was all around there. And so I had to sleep on the sofa for 2 or 3 weeks because I couldn't sleep on that side. So it was the whole kind of American tour and the British tour, and then suddenly really, really resting and knowing that I had to rest for a month. That was it. No movement, no nothing for a month. No work, no nothing. No listening to music, no anything. But I did listen to music, of course. So I was putting on stuff and just hearing things for comfort, I suppose, and then put on the Wichita Lineman, and it's just, you know, I am a lineman for the county, you know, and it's just like that chord, and it's like, oh, the melody and the whole thing. That's the song I wish I'd written. And the chord structures, you know, that song, wow. And Glenn Campbell's voice, effortless, and his guitar playing on it, everything about it. And I've since seen Rick Beato things on, is it Beato? How do you pronounce his surname?
He's here in Atlanta.
Beato.
Yeah.
Is he really? Oh, that's cool. And he's brilliant to listen to, you know, and the guests he has on and the way he talks to them, it's really engaging. I love it. You know, just learning so much. And the musicians seem to be really relaxed. Like I'm relaxed with you. It's like, it's good. So hearing all about the concept of that song and how when it was in the studio and there's an organ part, you know, And how that was moved into the studio, and Glenn phoned and said, "We've got to have it in the studio. We've got to have it in the studio." That's it. And I thought, well, of course, all the magic and the effort that went into making that beautiful recording that's here. It's so much performance. The live stuff is the reason why I'm bawling now. I'm sure it's not just the song and the chords and structures, because if that had been made on a laptop on the grid, I am a lineman for the county. I don't know if that's the key, but da 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 da. It wasn't the same thing. I don't know whether it would have the same impact,
Right.
because a lot of all the magic is in the actual recording.
Mhm.
That's what it tends to be missing in contemporary recordings. It's very impressive now when you hear stuff. But has it got that? Did the organ get moved into the studio for 3 o'clock in the morning? Did all this magic happen? You've got Glenn Campbell's just Glenn Campbell, all the experience and influences he had in music at that particular point. Amazing.
That's a great one to choose. I can always never decide between Bacharach songs or Stephen Sondheim. So many of those make me cry. They're
Yeah.
just so beautiful as well. It's
Yeah.
hard.
Well, that's just pop music, and then you get into classical and you start to go, oh,
Right.
where do I start? I
Exactly.
mean, pieces of music there that can reduce you not just to tears, but blubbering mess or thrills. That's what the power of music can do. So many things. I mean, it can turn you into the instant bliss. Certain pieces of music. I'm listening to John Barry's thing at the moment, and it's called Heartland, the Heartlands, from the Beyondness of things, and it's just put it on and just walk around to it. And it's just everything becomes you're in a movie. You're suddenly in a great movie, and you look at a hedgerow, and it's like, and everything suddenly. And when the orchestra comes in, it's like, it reminds me of going to see Jungle Book with my nan, and hearing the opening theme and seeing the Technicolor come up, and suddenly thinking, this isn't reality. I love this. This is what life's all about. Like, this isn't school, this isn't teachers. This isn't all the hostility you can feel and the bullying and not that I was bullied, badly, but stuff goes on at school anyway. Even if you're just being a child is hard, getting through school. I mean, you need to have a great time. There's still other stuff that's going on, and it's embarrassment and social awkwardness, especially in the UK.
Well, that's why music tied to images like films, and especially ones you see when you're young and impressionable, stay with you for so long. And I get to a point where I think, am I ever going to get to a point where I'm too old to absorb new experiences like that? And there's something, like on Instagram or all these, they have trending audio. So when you try to add music from the phone to it, whatever, it suggests all these things that are trending on TikTok or whatever. And there's a guy, I think his name is like Nicholas Britell or something like that. I'd never heard of him, and it's a beautiful piece. I thought, oh my gosh, this must be like mid to late 20th century classical composition. And no, it's like a modern day, like, guy who writes movie soundtracks, and it's just breathtaking. And
I
think
think
it's
I've
called
got the same one.
Agape or
I think
something.
yes. Our algorithms are probably playing
Very
with each
similar.
other, because I put that on Instagram to bits of film and to bits of photographs and stuff, because it's a really emotive piece of music, isn't it? It's
Isn't it
instant.
nice?
It
Yeah.
transports you to another
Yeah.
realm, doesn't it? Everything suddenly, if it's grim around you, you can be in the awful area, and it just suddenly all the bricks and mortar can become really romantic.
Yeah.
You
One
know?
thing I liked is that the idea that, you mentioned John Barry, you mentioned these folks connected specifically to movies, and we think of them as composers, but not breaking that mold of like the level of, oh, this is in the classical tradition of what composers
Yeah.
are. But we've broken that now, especially with video games and with TV and with everything. And I was interviewing A.R. Rahman, I don't know if you know him, the other day. He's one of India's biggest music stars, and he is working with Hans Zimmer on some things together. And he was talking about that process in the age of like trending audio. But I guess everything does start with a riff or that part that transports you. And then I guess the job of the composer is to finish the rest of it. If somebody
Yeah.
only listens to 3 seconds, 3 seconds is the threshold on Instagram for how long people watch or listen, so you've gotta grab them with that. That's a pretty big challenge. But I
Mm.
do wanna get to your sweet song because I know we talked about favorite melodies, but the sweet song of yours can be anything that reminds you of something special or came at a hard time or was the result of getting over something or breaking into something new, or it could just be one that you like the way it sounds. We've already talked about Kite, but we need your special
Oh,
sweet
one of mine.
yeah.
So one of mine that was,
It's your sweet song. It's like the embodiment of you. What would that be?
that's an interesting question. Yeah. I feel on the spot here. What came to mind? What is that? Milk Film.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Not the recording,
yeah.
but the actual song. Yeah, it sort of captured, I think, the essence of a time. 1980, end of 81 to 82 was a really sweet period. If you're talking sweet, it was a sweet spot, you know. And Milk Film was definitely a sweet spot. Just images of on bicycles and through parishes, and then taking a hymn as the chorus. We're glad that I live in mine. I didn't grow up Christian or anything, but I loved the sound of the music. If I did go to any kind of church once or twice, maybe in at Christmas or something, or just hearing them because you had to sing them sometimes in assembly. And I really liked that. Glad that I live in my, glad that the sky is blue, glad for the country lanes, glad for the fall of dew. And I thought, that's lovely. And just ended up going in to this song once you are, that's what your job is. That was my thing to come up with songs. So I'm like fitting them all together and learning what to do and things and taking mixed media from everywhere, really, just being influenced by all things bright and beautiful, but still not having nothing Christian about it at all. But I just loved, I mean, it reminded me of films like If as well. We had such brilliant cinema growing up. If you're born in 1961, we had all these great black comedies and things and the films going on. And when Clockwork Orange and If and yeah, cinema, even early cinema, like American cinema influence, like Play Misty for Me and things. Brilliant films, weren't they? And brilliant music in them. I felt so lucky to have been influenced in real time of all that stuff that was going on culturally. Well, the first time I saw Entertainer Mr. Sloan, I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. It was so good. It's like, why are they living in a churchyard? Why are they in a church? So that was an influence. And that's probably the reason when you're writing, when it was later, you're just coming up with songs about churchyards and vicars and being glad and if. And it was my version, my sweet, innocent version, as much as you can be at 1920, sweet and innocent. And in hindsight, back in those days, it was just you didn't feel really like that because punk was kicking off and everything was. It still had an innocence about it. Although it didn't seem like it. It was like that thing of like 1979. You had Watership Down and Scum. I mean, how opposite can you get that? So you're growing up in that year that is, my mum would always say, well, sit down on five has always reminded me of you, And I'm going, yeah, mum, yeah, it's on telly, it's on telly again, it's on telly. And then you've got Scum where you can't believe what you're watching. It's so distressing, it's so unforgiving, it's like, oh my God, the scenes in it are gruesome. It was Ray Winston's one of his first films, not his first film, but one of them. And yeah, that was that period. So 1981 and 1982 was still the same. That the sweetness was still there, and Haircut 100 were definitely a representation of the sweetness. But actually, the people, our influences, and the people we'd known, and we were quite this close still to kind of like underground gangsters. It's that you're that close. You're that close. It's all
I
sweet
love
and nice and everything, but that's very much England and in London. Yeah.
I love that description. Well, thank you, Nick. Thank you so much for all your time today. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you, Kristi.
as you know, of course, I'll be looking for whatever and anything you all release music-wise with Haircut 100. And very excited, as I know everybody who watches this will be, to catch the show, especially here in Atlanta at the Symphony Hall very soon.
That sounds very posh.
It is a lovely place to play.
Good to see you again. See you at the gig.
All right. See you. Take care.
See you
Bye.
there. You too. Bye.